I am Tim Shirley, the senior minister of the SouthShore United Church of Christ. This is a sermon for November 15th, Living the Posts in the Present. PTSD, Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. It is usually a term we have come to associate with the military upon their return from active duty combat. For most of us civilians, this term seems on a first glance far removed from our reality. But upon further review, 9 months into a COVID crisis that is not only showing no signs of abating, but is once again spiking, surpassing its previous high water marks, perhaps even mutating, going way beyond our wildest imagination. It certainly has far exceeded the minimal expectations and predictions of the White House, as the president and his sycophants continue their delusional best to deny, defer, and deflect, minimize the reality of this global scourge. Delusional qualities are never a good look. Never good to be a delusionary. I just love that word. It was said recently during the heat of the campaign, you will remember that the virus was going to vanish, to magically disappear on November 4th, the day after the election, and we would hear nothing more about it. Those are the promising words of the president, not mine. Well, it has done everything except gone away. It certainly has come as no surprise or shock to Dr. Anthony Tony Fauci. However, whose grim predictions have made him look the part of a brilliant prognosticator. A soberingly revelating prophet indeed. No wonder so many hang on his every word. Don't shoot the messenger. I think it's safe to say that all of us in some way, to some degree, are suffering from some aspects, at least a few of the symptoms of PTSD. Whether we have consumed an unhealthy dose of our politics, as we obsessed during an election season that seemingly would not end, going way too long, that went into overdrive, overfunction, and overtime, or been negatively affected by the economic downturn, or whether we simply have grown weary of the monotony. We have been impacted in many a derogatory way. The daily, weekly, monthly, dare I soon say to be yearly, grind of this plague of pandemic proportions. We're wearing heavily upon us as we obediently wear our masks, except for those who stubbornly refuse and do not, all the while socially distancing and navigating and negotiating a host of annoying inconveniences, or suffering the unhealthy combustible mix of all three, has forced us all into the same boat with nary a life raft in sight. Throw us a life preserver. We do not need another anchor. We even have a new term painfully and accurately coined for our condition, pandemic fatigue. Can you believe it? That says it all. For such a time as this malady is now regarded as an officially recognized and registered clinical ailment. It is real, not imagined. Our imagination already stretched to excess these days. My hunch is that at some time during this long stretch of a protracted agony, each one of us has suffered the slings and arrows of at least a hint of melancholia, mild to severe depression, no doubt combined with serious waves of fear and anxiety, the unknown, most unsettling. What we would now gladly call the old pre-COVID days are not that far behind us in the rearview mirror, but they already seem so far, far away, light years removed, getting smaller and smaller by the minute. My other hunch is that all of us have lost a friend or loved one who has succumbed to this pervasive virus. These lonely and agonizing deaths assuring us that this is not fake news, anything but alternative facts. We are tired of hearing that. I am amazed at the number of doubters, skeptics and cynics who continue to deny the reality of this serious and deadly illness, claiming that it is part of a leftist, deep state political hoax. As of now, more than 248,000 dead people and counting would beg to differ, crying out from the grave, pleading like Lazarus of old, that we get our heads out of the sand and take seriously this ever-present danger of biblical proportions. A clear and constant concern, heeding the dire warnings of scientists and other experts conveying the potential of what is a most severe threat to the very survival of the human species. Okay, I can now leave my soapbox and move us toward where I would have us go in this sermon, veering sharply on this homiletical journey. How do we survive? How do we cope? How do we avoid obsessing on the pandemic, fixating on the plight of the plague? How do we manage the constantly shifting polarities embedded within the multifaceted complexities of life that are currently confusing and confounding us, making our heads spin? How do we find ways to thrive, finding life-giving nutrients in the midst of all that threatens to devour, to consume us emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually? We need a guide. We need a roadmap to help us navigate and negotiate our reality, to manage the many concerns, the issues that are now a part of our daily existence and no doubt will remain a part of our lives into the distant future. We need some words of encouragement, full of health, hope, happiness, and healing. Rather than succumbing to an overwhelming sense of depression and defeat, throwing up our arms in frustrated surrender, we are the key to our own survival, our own thriving. We can wallow in self-pity, individually or collectively, or we can find our inner resolve and buck up, as the saying goes, knowing that only the strong will survive. And we all have the capacity of a certain amount of internal strength, intestinal fortitude. To use a cliche, the going gets tough, the tough get going. Now is that time. It calls for us to live within the bellwether crucible moments of these days. For such a sobering and unsettling time as this, we need both a chronos, real-time response, combined with kairos, God's divine timing, a suspended dimension of time solely dedicated, always sensitive to a God presence, a divinely inspired holy connection transpiring in the here and now, an inbreaking of time as we know it. It is not a matter of the glass being half full or half empty. It is what it is. And we must find ways to make the most of it. Yes, perspective can help. Optimism certainly can't hurt. No defeatism allowed. Outlook is vital, a positive mindset, but so is intentionality. All our thoughts and actions combined, working in concert together, a tandem effort, all creating necessary handles, the sum of which gives us the motivation, the meaning, movement, and momentum to put one proverbial foot in front of the other and keep living lives that matter, lives that are fulfilled and fulfilling, lives that look outward and upward and avoid an internal and even external circling of the wagons. An individual and collective communal despondency, fueling an always dangerous and downwardly spiraling, narcissistically self-centered mentality that can certainly kill the body, but definitely kills the spirit, destroys the soul. In other words, we are still called as followers of Jesus and disciples of Christ to extend ourselves toward our neighbor, to put ourselves out there, continuing the fight for social justice in the ways society on the grandest scale is desperately demanding. The cry of Earth's disenfranchised and marginalized, those living on the fringes, more than ever needing to be heard, needing assurance, more than ever needing their needs to be met, to be honestly addressed and demonstratively assuaged. They have been most negatively impacted by COVID. Statistics prove that. Do something every day. Make a difference, no matter how small. Our internal mechanisms and machinations, our ultimate purpose is most met, most achieved when manifest, when released, enabling, even empowering our best selves when we engage in our various encounters, when we find ways to touch our neighbor. The call of the gospel never changes because of the changes, positive or negative, that we all experience apart and together. In its myriad forms, we are called to take up our cross and work out our own salvation. None of that has changed. It is all still on the table, our table. We dance with the divine where we are, not where we wish we were. We live life as it unfolds before us, however it comes, whatever obstacles and smooth paths appear in our headlights. So for now, we hold on to our bootstraps. And whatever else we can cling that gives us comfort, hope, and optimism. Living PTSD in the present, and no doubt into an uncertain future. This is a part of our postmodern world now. pandemic will continue unabated until it does not. So remember that indeed God is our hope. Keep the faith, my friends. Keep the faith until and beyond and even then. In the name of the one who creates, redeems, and sustains and calls us to be light and life, bearing our talent even in the midst of abject darkness. Amen and amen.